The two masters, self and truth. Upon the battlefield of the human soul, two masters are ever contending for the crown of supremacy, for the kingship and dominion of the heart. The master of self, called the prince of this world, and the master of truth, called also the Father God. The master self is that rebellious one whose weapons are passion, pride, avarice, vanity, self-will, implements of darkness. The master truth is that meek and lowly one whose weapons are gentleness, patience, purity, sacrifice, humility, love. Instruments of light. In every soul the battle is waged, and as a soldier cannot engage at once in two opposing armies, so every heart is enlisted either in the ranks of self or of truth. There is no half and half course, there is self and there is truth. Where self is, truth is not, where truth is, self is not. Jesus, the manifested Christ, declared that no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Truth is so simple, so absolutely undeviating and uncompromising that it admits of no complexity, no turning, no qualification. Self is ingenious, crooked, and, governed by subtle and snake-like desire, admits of endless turnings and qualifications, and the deluded worshippers of self vainly imagine that they can gratify every worldly desire, and at the same time possess the truth. But the lovers of truth worship truth with the sacrifice of self, and ceaselessly guard themselves against worldliness and self-seeking. Do you seek to know and to realize truth? Then you must be prepared to sacrifice, to renounce to the uttermost, for truth in all its glory can only be perceived and known when the last trace of self has disappeared. The eternal Christ declared that he who would be his disciple must deny himself daily. Are you willing to deny yourself, to give up your lusts, your prejudices, your opinions? If so, you may enter the narrow way of truth, and find that peace from which the world is shut out. The absolute denial, the utter extinction, of self is the perfect state of truth, and all religions and philosophies are but so many aids to this supreme attainment. Self is the denial of truth. Truth is the denial of self. As you let self die, you will be reborn in truth. As you cling to self, truth will be hidden from you. While you cling to self, your path will be overpowered with difficulties, and repeated pains, sorrows, and disappointments will be your consequence. There are no difficulties in truth, and coming to truth, you will be freed from all sorrow and disappointments. Truth in itself is not hidden and dark. It is always revealed and is perfectly crystal clear. But the blind and wayward self cannot perceive it. The light of day is not hidden except to the blind, and the light of truth is not hidden except to those who are blinded by self. Truth is the one reality in the universe, the inward harmony, the perfect justice, the eternal love. Nothing can be added to it, or taken from it. It does not depend upon any man, but all men depend upon it. You cannot perceive the beauty of truth while you are looking out through the eyes of self. If you are egoistical, you will color everything with your own vanities. If lustful, your heart and mind will be so clouded with the smoke and flames of passion, that everything will appear distorted through them. If proud and narrow-minded, you will see nothing in the whole universe except the magnitude and importance of your own opinions. There is one quality which distinguishes the man of truth from the man of self, and that is humility. To be not only free from vanity, stubbornness and egotism, but to regard one's own opinions as of no value, this indeed is true humility. He who is immersed in self regards his own opinions as truth, and the opinions of other men as error. But that humble truth lover who has learned to distinguish between opinion and truth, regards all men with the eye of charity, and does not seek to defend his opinions against theirs, but sacrifices those opinions that he may love the more, that he may manifest the spirit of truth, for truth in its very nature is unexplainable and can only be lived. He who has most of charity has most of truth. Men engage in heated controversies, and foolishly imagine they are defending the truth, when in reality they are fiercely defending their own petty interests and perishable opinions. The follower of self takes up arms against others. The follower of truth takes up arms against himself. Truth, being unchangeable and eternal, is independent of your opinion and of mine. We may enter into it, or we may stay outside, but both our defense and our attack are pointless, and are hurled back upon ourselves. There is but one religion, the religion of truth. There is but one error, the error of self. Truth is not a formal belief, it is an unselfish, holy, and aspiring heart, and he who has truth is at peace with all, and cherishes all with thoughts of love. You may easily know whether you are a child of truth or a worshipper of self, if you will silently examine your mind, heart, and conduct. Do you harbor thoughts of suspicion, enmity, envy, lust, pride? Or do you strenuously fight against these? If the former, you are chained to self, no matter what religion you may profess. If the latter, you are a candidate for truth, even though outwardly you may profess no religion. Are you passionate, self-willed, ever seeking to gain your own ends, self-indulgent, and self-centered, or are you gentle, mild, unselfish, gave up of every form of self-indulgence? If the former, self is your master. If the latter, truth is the object of your affection. Do you strive for riches? Do you fight, with passion, for your party? Do you lust for power and leadership? Are you given to showiness and self-praise? Or have you given up the love of riches? Have you relinquished all strife? Are you content to take the lowest place, and to be passed by unnoticed? And have you ceased to talk about yourself and to regard yourself with self-complacent pride? The signs by which the truth lover is known are unmistakable. When men, lost in the devious ways of error and self, have forgotten the heavenly birth, the state of holiness and truth, they set up artificial standards by which to judge one another, and make acceptance of, and adherence to, their own particular theology, the test of truth, and so men are divided one against another, and there is ceaseless bitterness and strife, and unending sorrow and suffering. Do you seek to realize the birth into truth? There is only one way: let self die. All those lusts, appetites, desires, opinions, limited conceptions and prejudices to which you have up to now so persistently held on to, let them fall from you. Let them no longer hold you in bondage, and truth will be yours. The giving up of self is not merely the self-denial of outward things. It consists of the disallowance of the inward sin, the inward error. Not by giving up vain clothing, not by relinquishing riches, not by abstaining from certain foods, not by speaking smooth words, not by merely doing these things is the truth found, but by giving up the spirit of vanity, by relinquishing the desire for riches, by abstaining from the lust of self-indulgence, by giving up all hatred, strife, condemnation, and self-seeking, and becoming gentle and pure at heart. By doing these things is the truth found. To do the former, and not to do the latter, is Pharisaism, the principles and practices of the Pharisees, and hypocrisy, whereas the latter includes the former. You may renounce the outward world, and isolate yourself in a cave or in the depths of a forest, but you will take all your selfishness with you, and unless you renounce that, great indeed will be your wretchedness and deep your delusion. You may remain just where you are, performing all your duties, and yet renounce the world, the inward enemy. To be in the world and yet not of the world is the highest perfection, the most blessed peace, is to achieve the greatest victory. The renunciation of self is the way of truth. As you succeed in overcoming self, you will begin to see things in their right relations. He who is swayed by any passions, prejudice, like or dislike, adjusts everything to the particular bias, and sees only his own delusions. He who is absolutely free from all passion, prejudice, preference, and partiality, sees himself as he is, sees others as they are, sees all things in their proper proportions and right relations. Having nothing to attack, nothing to defend, nothing to conceal, and no interests to guard, he is at peace. He has realized the profound simplicity of truth, for this unbiased, tranquil, blessed state of mind and heart is the state of truth. He who attains to it dwells with the angels, and sits at the footstool of God, the Supreme. Knowing the great law, knowing the origin of sorrow, knowing the secret of suffering, knowing the way of salvation and truth, how can such a one engage in strife or condemnation? Though he knows that the blind, self-seeking world, surrounded with the clouds of its own illusions, and enclosed in the darkness of error and self, cannot perceive the steadfast light of truth, and is completely incapable of comprehending the profound simplicity of the heart that has died, or is dying, to self. He also knows that when the suffering ages have piled up mountains of sorrow, the crushed and burdened soul of the world will fly to its final refuge, and that when the ages are completed, every prodigal will come back to the fold of truth. And so he dwells in goodwill towards all, and regards all with that tender compassion which a father bestows upon his wayward children. Men cannot understand truth because they hold on to self, because they believe in and love self, because they believe self to be the only reality, whereas it is the one delusion. When you cease to believe in and love self, you will desert it, and will fly to truth, and will find the eternal reality. When men are intoxicated with the wines of luxury, and pleasure, and vanity, the thirst of life grows and deepens within them, and they delude themselves with dreams of fleshly immortality. But when they come to reap the harvest of their own sowing, and pain and sorrow happen, then, crushed and humiliated, laying down self and all the intoxications of self, they come, with aching hearts, to the one immortality, the immortality that destroys all delusions, the spiritual immortality in truth. Men pass from evil to good, from self to truth, through the dark gate of sorrow, for sorrow and self are inseparable. Only in the peace and bliss of truth is all sorrow conquered. If you suffer disappointment because your cherished plans have been blocked, or because someone has not come up to your expectations, it is because you are clinging to self. If you suffer remorse for your conduct, it is because you have given way to self. If you are overwhelmed with humiliation and regret because of the attitude of someone else toward you, it is because you have been cherishing self. If you are wounded on account of what has been done to you or said of you, it is because you are walking in the painful way of self. All suffering is of self. All suffering ends in truth. When you have entered into and realized truth, you will no longer suffer disappointment, remorse and regret, and sorrow will flee from you. Self is the only prison that can ever bind the soul, truth is the only angel that can free the soul, and when he comes to call, arise and follow fast, his way may lie through darkness, but it leads to light at last. The distress of the world is of its own making. Sorrow purifies and deepens the soul, and the situation of sorrow is the introduction to truth. Have you suffered much? Have you sorrowed deeply? Have you pondered seriously upon the problem of life? If so, you are prepared to wage war against self, and to become a disciple of truth. The professors who do not see the necessity for giving up self, frame endless theories about the universe, and call them truth, but do you pursue that direct line of conduct which is the practice of righteousness, and you will realize the truth which has no place in theory, and which never changes. Cultivate your heart. Water it continually with unselfish love and deep-felt pity, and strive to shut out from it all thoughts and feelings which are not in accordance with love. Return good for evil, love for hatred, gentleness for ill-treatment, and remain silent when attacked. So shall you transmute all your selfish desires into the pure gold of love, and self will disappear in truth. So will you walk blamelessly among men, yoked with the easy yoke of lowliness, and clothed with the divine garment of humility. True happiness comes from having a sense of inner peace and contentment, which in turn must be achieved by cultivating altruism, love and compassion, and by eliminating anger, selfishness,